I'm still kind of like sitting, observing, and looking forward for some things that I think are of value to Black men as a whole, the Black community as a whole, and I would even go as far as to say the Black nation who has no home as a whole. The ones who don't have a nation, no sovereign land, no laws that govern them that they rule and live under, but they are forced to live under the rules and laws of another that have never been, anyone can say, as a supporter of our future. Let's see who else is there. Granville, I believe, was the last person I shouted out. As you guys come on in, hit the like button. Make that a habit. If on the way out you don't believe that the discussion overall, my contribution was not of that great of value, you can always hit the down button on your way out, right? And that will kind of give me perspective as well. I'm not overly sensitive. I'm not really sensitive at all, but definitely not overly sensitive whereby someone posting a true reaction with regard to the down button, that's not going to affect me. That's going to, if anything, if I'm aware of this, the stats, I will see what I can do to meet the challenge of what it is that their expectations may be. Obviously, if their expectations are within line and not out of line with the show and all the other things that not only the Lapeef Network does, but the focus of what I try to do here on Sage Talk. So let's get ready to get into it, right? I know everyone sees the thumbnail earlier. And I have the lead attorney, Jonathan Whitlock, and Coach Greg Adams. And today's topic and discussion is really about why young men need leadership. And the second part, I'm not sure if JR had included that in the subtext of the topic. And the second part was that OGs are needed in the culture. I want to try to address multiple things at the same time in this conversation. So definitely, I'm looking forward to everyone's participation, pushback, challenges, and for us to broaden the conversation to enlighten us better on how we deal with various things, right? Mr. C, doing well. Thank you very much. Stephen Day, appreciate the salute. Welcome back to Sage Talk for another edition. I think the fact, and I'm going to make this as a bold statement that I think everyone in America needs to understand, Black people particularly, but America as a whole. The young people are the future. They're the future leaders and the future of Black America, Black people in America. The old heads have had their time. If they squandered it, that's on them. Young people, y'all don't owe us, myself included, old heads, jack. You don't owe us jack. But I think because of that, some people may want to say, well, if I don't owe you shit, I don't have to listen to anything you got to say. And I think that may be a general disconnect that some may think or say or believe or what have you, right? And when I say that the young people are the future leaders of America or Black America, that is true. I think everyone can concur that that would be an honest observational statement or comment. But I think there are two things we need to address within ourselves and come to a conclusion about. The old guards, those who are in politics presently, that's been serving for 10 or more congressional terms, whether it's in their state or if they have been on the national scene, whether in Congress or the Senate. If you've been there 20 years or more, you need to sit down. And I know that may sound harsh. You need to sit down because you're in the way. Some people get comfortable with the way things are. Very few people, especially like married people, right? Married people are most times the least people that are likely to shake the boat. They usually have more to lose. There's more foundation there. Risk is multiplied for them exponentially. Because what may happen to a young person by themselves, the fallout effect may only be one person if they didn't do something to actually injure someone else. But a bad decision by a young person by themselves, the fallout would only be on them. With an older person, the fallout can have a multiple effect. It can affect everyone that is under their covering, you might say, protection, and those who are close enough to feel the fallout of them making a judgment that may have significant risk, and the judgment may not go in their favor, or the outcome, I should say, may not go in their favor. So the old guard are usually less reluctant to step out, to risk, to even do what they know is right, but simply because they can find a way of reasoning to justify why acting now is not the best time, and maybe sometimes later we can find a way to work around it. And that's a pacifist type of, ideology, and some people subscribe to it, some don't. I do not. But there's another thing that I think OGs can have a valuable contribution. OGs have what some people might say is wisdom, right? And there are different type of wisdom, but there's a certain type of wisdom that I think young people are yet to appreciate. There's a certain type of wisdom that just comes from time. Everyone in life have a journey that you walk in life. However good, however bad, your ability or inability to succeed at the trials that was placed before you in your journey. So because of that, some of us develop, how can I say? Some of us develop things to keep us safe. Don't rock the boat. Takes time. And that's true. Some things do take time. But sometimes things are in the moment and they need to be addressed in the moment. But my point with regard to time and how men who have lived, I would say north of 50, and that will probably include some Gen Xers, and then those who are north of 60 or 65. That will probably definitely include some baby boomers. So I think part of my conversation today will apply to those two generations as a whole. And I'm speaking to the men because when it comes to dealing with challenges, those things have a certain element of risk to it. And when it comes to life and risk that are associated, it is men who, in past, have usually stepped out in defense because it's part of the protection armor or cloak that we wear as being a male in society, right? So it's something that we are taught, learn, and practice and do. So what I'm saying with regard to OGs, Black men who are of the age of, I would really like to say 55, but I know that there's some people in this space that I'm already familiar with that are slightly below that number. So I would use 50 as the lowest benchmark for you to enter into that space where you can say you've lived a long time, or 5 decades, which sometimes living 5 decades for some people could be a grueling 5 decades, right? The hardest thing they ever had to do. So different people experience that time differently, but there's something that you learn from it. And I think that there is a wisdom that Black men who are OGs can offer the young leadership that is forming. So I think, one, the young leadership need to establish or learn, one, to respect those who are OGs. I'm not talking about criticizing someone's point. If you put yourself out there and you make a statement, then your comments should be examined, right? So that's not what I'm referring to. But what I'm saying is just the idea that an older person has value. So that's one, I would like to kind of throw that out there, that an older person in Black America, which we lack some of, is something that is valuable. And another thing I would like to see OGs step to doing is be slow to speak and quick to defend. Let me say that again. I would like to see OGs who are slow to speak. Someone dropped that in the chat. Slow to speak and quick to defend. And the reason why I'm putting this out there is because if you have lived 50 or more years, you know that sometimes what you were told or information that was made available in the 90s or in the mid or late 80s, 20 years later, 25 years later, proved to be unreliable information, that it was wrong. And then upon examination, you find out that it was an outright lie and a deception. So by you having that experience and being exposed to it, to that type of use of power, one, you should be slow to speak, meaning criticize, be observant, but you should be quick to defend. Because many times the person being attacked is not always a just attack. And just so someone is not being used as meat for some angry mob of some sort, that we are willing to allow members of our society, our family, to be chewed up and spit out by those who have always chewed us up and spit us out. So those are the three things I would like to see with regard to OGs be more representative of. Usually in controversy, many people are not willing to make a stand, because when you make a stand, whether it's principle, ethical, or moral, it will pose a challenge to those who may not have those three primary things as representative of who they may be themselves. So if you're not that, you're going to push back on that. So what I would say is that not only being slow to speak and quick to defend, that OG should be ready to take a stance. Like there's the young brother who's, I'm not even sure if he's Gen X. I believe he might be Gen X, but I think he's on a show with ESPN, and he made some bold statements to stand up and back Kyrie before the tide has shifted. And he was ready to put it all on the line. And, you know, as I watched some of the commentary surrounding how he spoke and delivered his message, you know, if you've lived 50 years, 55 years, 60 years, you know, don't get insulted who is listening or who may listen to this in a future replay. But sometimes I find that the value of appropriate descriptive adjectives work well. I think the pussy in you should wear off by the time you're 50. Let me say that again. And I'm speaking to black men. I think the pussy in you should wear off by the time you're 50, which is why I said you should be able to take a stance. And if you're not at the space where you can actually make a stance and support, then your journey through life has been possibly not as valued to you as you may believe. You may have walked a very cautious life. Okay, let's see here. 1 second. John M., you said 50. You were thinking 35. 35 is really the age when I think most men starts between 33 and 35, when most men start to really strive in their career. And usually the first, I would say, between 5 years getting out of the university or 6 years, you're trying to find your footing. And sometimes the career that you may have chosen may not be the career that you will find yourself in to be successful. It's rare that both of those things match. It's good when it does, but sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. Like I studied structural engineering and architectural design. I like how things are constructed, and I like to know what's under the skin, right? What's behind the facade. So structural engineering was my thing. But I ended up having a successful career in finance, right? So it was part of a journey. Now, most young men, white men who enter financial services business usually do so very early, by the time they're 20, 22. I started late. I didn't start my finance career until 1990. Like actually, what was it? 1987 was the Black Monday, right? So I started 2 years after that, like 89, going into 1990. So I would say by the age of 35, you should be at an awareness level with yourself, what your goals and objectives are, and you should be able to take a more keener way in which you examine things that happens around you in your life and globally. You know, we're in an age now where global awareness is very important. Okay, what is this? The UK investor, the career I'm in now isn't the one I want to be in. And that is a challenge, because if the career pays well, you know, sometimes money trump the reason to change, to do something that you know might in the end be more successful and possibly profitable for you. But if what you're doing presently makes you a certain level, give you a certain level of comfort in your economy and how you move, it may impede one's transition. And usually life will make that transition for you when the time is up for what you're doing, right? So, and that's part of the journey too, being able to identify changes when they're beginning, and don't let life whip your ass too long, because life journey can be painful. They don't care about whether your mother is black, your father is black, if you were raised by a baby mama. Life don't give a shit about none of that, bro. It's like, you have joined the human race, and this is how we run this race. And uh, whether you accept that you're a part of the race or not, you're in it. The sooner you play, the better your chance to succeed. The longer it takes for you to find out the rules of the game and what you're in, possibly the more painful your journey could be. Could be more educational, but it could be more painful as well, right? Because life journeys are painstakingly, when they teach, they don't teach without pain. They usually teach with pain. So kind of getting back to how I was leading into this intro.